Good morning, everybody, and welcome to PSG of Mercer County on this lovely rainy day. And of course, we also say Happy Aloha Friday. And the rain doesn't frustrate me. If we were in Hawaii, maybe we would visit Kauai, the island of Kauai, the rainiest spot on Earth, over 450 inches of rain a year. I don't think Princeton can handle it, but apparently they can. So not bad to have a little bit of a rainy day today. And also want to say Happy National Pecan Sandies Day. When I was growing up, that was my favorite cookie. My grandparents had it. It was my grandfather's favorite cookie, so I guess it became mine. And I'm sorry I didn't think to bring pecan sandies today. We could have all enjoyed that. But for cookie lovers everywhere, you can celebrate the pecan sandy if you enjoy that, and do that today. Happy National Pecan Sandies Day. PSG of Mercer County is a group that is here for you, anybody that is in any kind of career transition. And we are here to help make you and your job search a little bit more effective. And we do that by providing a number of resources for you. We do, of course, have our LinkedIn group. And our LinkedIn group now still has over 1,700 members. It's a very solid group of people, and they are all people that are job seekers who have visited this group, this meeting at least one time. And we will get this right. We will not touch the computer any longer. So these are all people that have been to at least one of our PSG of Mercer County meetings, and that's very important. So we actually do our best to keep people who are not members or attendees of PSG. We try and keep them out of our LinkedIn group. A lot of them tend to be group collectors, name collectors, list collectors for their own benefit. And so we want to try and keep those people out of the group. Instead, we want to keep people in the group that are really pro job seeker support. They understand the needs of job seekers. So there's a good chance that if you reach out to somebody in our LinkedIn group, even if they are not yet a first-degree connection of yours, that they will respond to you because they're kind of part of the group. So do join our LinkedIn group if you are not yet a member. And when you do join for the first time, you'll see you'll be put in pending status. And about once or twice a week, we just check the list of people that have requested against our attendance rolls and make sure that those people have been here at least once. We do also have our website. Our website is psgofmercercounty.org. psgofmercercounty.org. It is more than just a landing page and landing site. It is over 120 web pages of content. So it is a lot of information that we've put together and continue to put together and maintain for you. Among the things that we do have is we do have a menu on the top with a link called Open Jobs. So you click on that link, and that's kind of a two-part set of pages. One part is a links of 7 counties, and they are job boards pages. And those 7 counties are Mercer County and the surrounding border counties that actually touch us. And for any of you that live overseas in Bucks County, Pennsylvania, that's a border county. And of course, we cross the mighty Delaware River over that new bridge. We have over 2,600 career pages of other companies among those 7 counties there. So you click on the county, and then what opens up is up to 12 different industry type areas like not-for-profits, financial services, and the like. And when you click on one of those, you get the list of companies and you can get a link to their career webpage. So go take a look. You can use it for a couple of reasons. One is create a targeted company list at the very least. You may not have realized, if you're interested in being geographically fairly close to our area here, all the companies that may have positions available in this geography. So you could use it to make a targeted company list. And then what becomes nice is you can go right to their career page to see the postings that they have open. We took that approach rather than just listing all those jobs on our own website directly, because the companies now are managing their own pages. So it's as current as the companies are keeping them. And let's put aside the argument for now, discussion, are they really posting real jobs or not? Well, they are posting, and so at least that they're there, so you have an opportunity to see what positions that are available. So go take a look at our open jobs page. Also, there is a link on that same open jobs page We do have a bit of our own job board. So a couple of people are periodically posting positions there as well. And the older ones probably are out of date, but any that are fairly recent will probably be current as well. So go take a look as to what is there. And as a reminder, or if you're visiting us for the first time, while you are, well, not you here in the room, but those virtually are visiting us virtually, we will soon be discontinuing our virtual format and discontinuing recording meetings. Next week, which is June 30th, will actually be our last virtual meeting or hybrid format. After that, we will only be in person, which is what we always were prior to COVID. So PSG of Mercer County, we are very pleased. We think it's good for us to be an in-person only option, and we invite you to come visit us in Princeton. We realize that some of you virtually are outside of our geography, so I'm sorry that you may be affected, but there's still plenty of other virtual meetings that are available. They will occupy that lane, and we will occupy the in-person lane. So you have the opportunity to meet people in person, network, and chit-chat with folks in person. And for those of you that will miss us, well, again, we're sorry, but we will have over 140 recorded sessions, all different topics. A couple of them may have repeated, but a tremendous amount of content that you could still view virtually through our YouTube channel. To find our YouTube channel, if you've never been there before, on our website, on the right side of the website, on the sidebar, is a YouTube logo, and the link is there. So just click on the YouTube logo, and you will be taken right to our YouTube channel, and you can watch any of those 140 videos. This session is also being recorded, so it will be there in a day or so as well. And our next week's session will be recorded as well, and that will be our last planned recorded session. So that's our announcement for our future of the group, how we're moving forward. And so, but for our future for today, PSG of Mercer County is pleased to welcome back Ed Hahn. Ed is a LinkedIn trainer, recruiter, and job seeker ally with a passion for networking and helping professionals return to the workforce. As a veteran of several industries, including publishing, financial services, and software, Ed has a keen understanding of and appreciation for the skills and traits valued in a wide range of environments, regulated and otherwise. Although he came to recruiting in December 2012, Ed finds fulfillment professionally as a recruiter, and that the diversity of his prior work experience is a great boon in connecting people from different industries and roles. Active in his community, Ed helps facilitate the job search group network NJ Job Seekers in Princeton, does so with me, happy to say, and has previously served as the executive chair of PSG of Mercer County. He's one of my predecessors, and online community manager for the HR networking group Wine and Dine. Ed has been a corporate recruiter at Cenlar FSB since December 2019. Lastly, he has been a LinkedIn user since 2012 and a LinkedIn trainer, and we call him a guru, for over 12 years. Holder of a Bachelor's of Arts degree in English Literature from Albright College, awarded in 1993, Ed is an avid social media fiend and job seeker ally. PSG of Mercer County is always pleased to welcome our favorite job seeker ally, Ed Hahn.
Thanks very much. Appreciate it. Great deal. Boy, guys, I am so excited to be back here. I can't even tell you how much I've missed being in this room with all of you. I will always have a very special place in my heart for PSG of Mercer County, because this is the first place where I realized, oh my gosh, I don't hate public speaking. I kind of like it. It's fun. And that was a powerful realization. You know, when you stand up in front of people and you say, listen, I have something that I know is valuable information and I want to share it with you. I mean, that can be really, really rewarding. So we're going to talk about a couple of things today, but we're going to talk about the ATS. And you've been seeing this advertised via PSG in these meetings each morning for a couple of weeks, I'm sure. Because the ATS is subject of a lot of confusion, a lot of anxiety, and honestly, a lot of, let's call them misunderstandings. We're going to get into all of that. And yes, I'm being a little spectacular. That's kind of my thing. So this is only the second, third time I've actually delivered this presentation before. But I'd like to include some stuff for everybody that I present to. Here's what we're going to talk about. If you have never seen me present before, you don't know this. I don't read my slides for you because you're intelligent people and can read perfectly well, and you've been doing it for years. This is what we're going to talk about today, all right? And yes, not feared, but embraced. Now, a lot of this was in the bio that David was able to read for you earlier. We're pleased to having been a job.org contributor for years. And, you know, been part of this group ever since we used to meet in Trenton, right, Em? But that's why you should be listening to me flatten my gums up here. So, always. Every Friday morning. There's a little piece of my heart right here. All right. So what do I know about ATSs? Let's talk about that. I'm a recruiter. I've been doing this thing for 11 years now. That's how many I've used. And as a matter of professional interest, because it is an important piece of every recruiter's toolkit, I've made a study and habit of learning about other ones I don't have direct experience with. This is very important to me because you know what? As we've all learned in this room, perhaps more than once, no job is permanent, right? And just because you work with a given software at one employer, it doesn't mean you're ever going to work with that software in the future. So I just like to kind of be aware of what's around and out there. And I kind of do a big dig on process improvement. So if there's an opportunity to upgrade from a particularly poor solution that we're using, like maybe we might be using right now, my current employer, I like to be able to present some good options, alternatives. That's kind of part of my value proposition as a part of the team. I talk with a ridiculous number of recruiters, a whole bunch of us. And I don't know how many of you have spoken a lot with other recruiters in the past. Some of you who know me, I'm sorry. But you know that I've got opinions about things. I am not unique in my profession in this respect. We're a pretty opinionated bunch. We've seen what works for us. We've seen what doesn't work for us. And by talking with others, we learn what doesn't work for others in our profession. And look, if you rely on a single tool to do the vast majority of the work you must do, it's good to know what the other options are, right? I mean, if you're a project manager, there's Microsoft Project. There is also other tools out there. And it might behoove you to understand what some of the alternative options are. If you're a software engineer, there's other environments, toolkits, libraries. Same principle, right? So, yeah, I've trialed a bunch of them over the years. This one I don't know. And if I present, I am very, very specific about my statements because you will inevitably encounter instances where guidance, advice, and counsel that you seek may conflict. This is normal. You've seen this already in countless instances. How many pages should my resume be, right? There's that whole debate. Oh, how much detail should I have in the LinkedIn profile? There's an entire conversation about that. And this is not to say there's any one right or wrong answer. I'm very suspicious of people who make prescriptive statements of that kind without any nuance, because I don't believe in that. I think that the hiring process, certainly, and the job search process is way too complex, has way too many moving pieces for any one statement to universally 100% of the time be factually correct for everyone. It just doesn't make sense, does it? I mean, you think about the job searches you have conducted in your own career over the years. They've all been a little different. I mean, apart from them all being a little frustrating, right? Because they are, we know. So when I present information, I always want you to be able to have the context from within which it arises, so that when you encounter different information, you don't sit there and think, well, one is right, one is wrong. Well, no, not necessarily. They may arise from very different contexts, use cases, and experiences. And it is therefore critical that you have that information to reconcile these things in a way that is satisfying, right? It's not necessarily that someone is lying to you or just flat out wrong. It's that they have different experiences, they form a different lens through which they view these things, right? Now, some of you, especially if you paid a lot of attention to the software industry back in the 90s, may recognize the acronym FUD. It's good to see at least two people do. That was a term that was coined by software industry journalists, I believe, who referred to the aspersions being cast on the now universal operating system called Linux. And I found it a fantastically useful expression, right? Because basically the idea about FUD is that it casts aspersions on the validity of something, right? Because it causes fear because it's something unknown, uncertainty, it's something unknown, doubt, something unknown, right? So FUD, very useful acronym I've always found ever since I first encountered it. Now, here are some very, very common responses people have to their interactions with the ATS, right? And listen, I have myself said all of these things. I will freely admit that, all right? Because again, what we think, what we believe, are the product of our experiences and viewed through the lenses of those experiences. Now, this one, right? I uploaded my blasted resume. Why do I have to copy and paste everything? I know. This is very frustrating. I'm going to talk about that one too. All right. I'm going to spend some special attention talking about this second bullet. Boom. Here's the truths. Now, some of you may have visited my LinkedIn profile. I'm so sorry. And in my LinkedIn profile, in my featured section, one of the things I talk about, and those of you who are visiting virtually, can do this right now in a different tab in your browser, of course. Be prepared. It's about 40 minutes-ish, so make sure you have a snack, maybe something to sip on. I talk about this very specific thing at some length. There are instances in which you will apply and you will be automatically rejected. Absolutely, this is true, but the actual proportion of those is extremely, extremely small. All right. I have seen ATSs that do match percentages. I currently work with one now. Yes, go ahead.
Hi, this is Bill Pagula.
Hey, Bill.
Could you also, when talking about bot rejections, I always kind of look, maybe I'm wrong, but I always kind of looked at the ATS output kind of like a Google search.
Okay.
And if you're not on page one, the recruiter doesn't even look at you. And so,
Okay.
so it's a de facto ATS rejection.
Okay. I don't have a slide that speaks to that specifically, Bill, but let me address that a little bit later. All right. But if I forget, please remind me. All right. I mean, the whole point is to share information. And of course, if I miss a question that's relevant, I've not done I've not served my purpose in being up here today, right? Great question, Bill. Thank you, Bill. Okay. So, is everyone in this room familiar with the expression "eat your own dog food"? Okay. So it refers to the principle that if you have a product or you need to understand what it is that you're actually putting out there. So of course, we're humans, we don't eat dog food, but the principle is you should test and know and develop familiarity with whatever the product or services that you are presenting to people, right? Very straightforward, and intuitively, it makes a lot of sense, right? Now, this also applies to processes, business processes. And one of them is the beloved ATS. Now, here's the thing. Not every employer makes its recruiters go through the applicant process that you have to go through. They don't. That is never a mandatory part of your training when you start with an employer, at least not that I've ever encountered. I don't think anyone does this, but they really should. Because if they did, they would understand exactly what they're asking every single applicant to do. And we all know it's goofy. We all know this because we've done it, we've lived it, and who are you telling how it is, right? So, this bullet in particular, in my first full year at my current employer, I had the pleasure of working on a project to implement this feature, which means when I got there, I actually had to go through that process myself without it. David, yes, go ahead.
Hi, excuse me. I know you pointed to the screen, but our virtual people are not seeing.
Oh, I'm sorry. I'm referring to
in those cases, maybe read the bullet points just.
Yeah. So just to clarify, I'm referring to the first sub bullet under the third bullet. Good ATS relevant one allows you to import from your LinkedIn profile. That was a big deal for me to work on that because I know that frustration. I had to do it after all. I've done it many times too, just like you guys. All right. Let me see something. Bill, we are going to get to the thing in another slide too. All right. So here's what, in order to be an ATS, you have to offer 3 features. As you see on the slide, right? You have these requirements, you've got the resumes, and then applications that come in from job seekers. Track the applicant's shopping. That's what it's in the name. And then store that information. And I think that the 4th bullet is one that people who have never been in HR don't appreciate. There's a lot of legal and compliance stuff that happens in the hiring process. Not every employer obviously adheres fully because we all have seen the news stories, right? But they're meant to certainly, a good and a responsible employer is diligent about that stuff. But these are, broadly speaking, the key characteristics that every single ATS, and there are literally hundreds on the market. And remember, just like any other market, you have your entry-level ones, your value ones, right, which are not as a little more expensive, but not as fully featured. Then you have your high-end ones, right? So there are ATSs for every part of that market. There are ATSs that are specifically used by external recruiters or headhunters versus ones used by corporate or internal recruiters, which is what I am doing. Now, here's some fairly common features that most ATSs, although not all, will offer to the user, meaning the HR or talent acquisition or recruiting teams. Right? I mean, if you have applicants, I want to communicate with them. I mean, that goes without saying, right? There's going to be a career portal, some means whereby you can see all the jobs that are currently active. Ideally, the career portal also gives you the ability to slice and dice as needed, so you can identify the specific kinds of roles that are relevant to you. And for example, if you go to the Johnson & Johnson careers page, they're an enormous conglomerate. They have jobs in just about every job function out there. And unless you can narrow down among the, I'm sure, thousands of positions they have available, you'll be lost. I mean, think about how often you go to page 2 of your Google search results, right? I mean, who does that? I mean, I have my Google search results set to like 100. I don't get past the first dozen most days, right? And then the knockout question. And this is a thing that really touches on what Bill was asking earlier. Bill, would you mind repeating the question again, please?
Okay, Ed. I'm always under the impression that an ATS presents to the recruiter a list of candidates that is the equivalent of a Google search.
Okay. That is a really, really good question. Now, here's the thing. Most ATSs, when you have a job posting that is active, actually, even if it's not active, it will show you all the people who actually applied to the position. And that is the way a lot of recruiters typically review the applicants for the role. Now, there's also the option in some ATSs, not all, to also search within the ATS based on various keywords. Because recruiters love our keywords. We really, really do. There's an entire branch of mathematics revolving around this. It's known as Boolean algebra, founded by a gentleman, George Boole, British mathematician. I think it was 18th century. I didn't get optimal sleep, so I may not be remembering that correctly. Really nifty fellow. So basically, yeah, computer scientists and recruiters, keywords, Boolean, very interesting stuff. The knockout question, sorry, I need to go back. Wait, did I? Yeah. Knockout questions do a couple of things. Now, these are conditions that say we cannot employ you. And if you tell me that if you answer in the affirmative to these questions, we say, oh, we can't employ you. That's it. Oh, excuse me. I didn't fully address the question Bill asked. Let me come back to that for just a minute. Usually, applicants are sorted by date and time stamp of application. It does not rank them. It does not care about the keyword match percentage generally. I talk with a lot of recruiters. None of us pay attention to the keyword match percentage. It's like, I'll get to why it doesn't matter in a bit. So the knockout questions, here are the kinds of things that's broadly what knockout questions are about. Okay. Here are examples drawn from my current employer. All right. If you're not 18 years of age or older, you have not reached majority legally, child labor laws apply. Most employers don't employ minors. Are you legally authorized to work in the U.S.? Well, if you're not legally authorized, we can't employ you, right? That should go without saying. Will you now require sponsorship? Is a very, very specific question. Now, if you are a U.S. citizen or a permanent resident of the U.S., great. You will never in the future require sponsorship. There are 1 or 2 other special instances that also will not require sponsorship. But any other kind of work authorization, you will at some point require some form of sponsorship. And unfortunately, the vast majority of employers in the US do not offer this. Those of you who are US citizens, when you see this on the application form, you may not actually know what they're really asking. This typically only comes up in the IT trades, because there is an awful lot of people who were born overseas, come to the US, and start working here. Heck, my father did. And then the last thing, especially important of late, we've all heard over the last, 2 or 3 quarters, major employers have been issuing their RTO, also known as return to office mandates for current employees. So that means that they might not be fully 100% on site, but they want you on site periodically. So listen, if I have an office and the position is based out of a location that's, say, downtown Philly, and you're in Spokane, Washington, you have a commute? Probably not. That would not be desirable. I don't think any of us would say, yeah, I want me some of that action, right? Now, in your instance, if you encounter this, understand that answering no is probably going to be a knockout. And again, more employers are abandoning fully remote. So this is very important for us. If you are open to considering a relocation, you should absolutely say yes to this. Because the recruiter is going to say, huh, well, you live here, office here, how's that going to work? Let's find out. All right? Now, I spoke about the fact, oh, I'm sorry, yes, go ahead.
No, I have a question. If we don't pass a killer question, say, do you have Microsoft 5 experience? And I don't, and I write no. I assume I'll be rejected. It's sometimes hard to find out if I'm rejected based on that or something else. You might get a rejection notice, say, 4 days later. So does the system program so that it knows automatically, but sometimes delays the sending of the rejection, so you don't know exactly that was why, but in fact that was why?
John, that is a fabulous question. Was that picked up well for the virtual crowd? Great. So yeah, if the question is asking, do you have X amount of Power BI, right? I would not personally use that as a knockout question. And from your standpoint, it's very difficult to determine if that is what's happening or not. What I will say, however, is that there is absolutely a feature that delays notifications. So if you get a rejection notice at like 2 a.m. Sunday, right? I've gotten it. I mean, there's been times that I've seen an applicant apply to my job, and I called that person within 5 minutes. This is a thing that actually can happen too. All right. I just happened to be looking. The resume happened to be really, really suitable. And I said, well, gosh, if I call him, he knows that he just applied. So that should be, I know he's available. And that's fine. Because new recruiters don't like waiting anymore.
That's hard to believe.
And I understand why you say that. I do. The timing with which we do things is almost never under our control. Almost never. But here are some. Wait, John, does that fully answer your question?
Right. So if we get the rejection at 2 o'clock in the morning on a Sunday, it means it was probably just automatically rejected.
Not necessarily. These are two separate features that may be coinciding here. If you get rejection, that absolutely means that there's a delay feature. It does not necessarily mean that you were automatically rejected. You could have been rejected for something else. There may have been someone else, they may be looking for a level of proficiency that they don't think that you have for whatever reason. There are other factors that also could be involved, John. So I kind of want to steer away from giving yes a line that said, yes, this is what happened answer. Does that make sense? Okay, cool. All right. Now, when you get toward your higher end kinds of solutions in the ATS world, you get these kinds of features, right? Integrate with LinkedIn, job portals like Indeed, ZipRecruiter, Career Builder, Monster. You've seen them all advertised. You know what they are. The ability to create a search agent. So when you go to the corporate career page, it says, hey, you also have a search agent. For a conglomerate like J&J, and you're a pharma professional, that makes plenty of sense. I mean, those guys have, I don't even know how many divisions and subsidiaries and other business units. They're enormous, right? That would make a lot of sense. For a 50-person shop, probably not the most sensible use of your time, right? But it's still a useful feature. Applicant match score. Yeah. Most ATSs don't offer this fourth bullet, the match score. Most don't. Some do. The one I currently use, for example, does. No one uses it. And like half a dozen strong recruiting team, we're like, oh yeah, that feature exists. We don't care. It's irrelevant. So I want to talk about that first bullet for a moment, okay? When you're applying online, what usually happens is you're going into your web browser, right? You're on the careers page, you hit apply, page changes, and asks you to it gives you instructions, right? Upload the resume, please give me the information, please link your LinkedIn profile, whatever it is, right? But because it's in your web browser, that means that there's a web address. So look in the URL bar, find out what that URL is. And then pay attention to this, because what usually happens is that I think every ATS out there now is cloud hosted. It's SaaS technology, which means it's delivered through the web, which means the URL is going to be company.taleo or .com or brassring.com or connexet.com or iceland.com. And that will tell you which ATS you're contending with. Okay. That can be extremely useful information for you. We've all seen the desired compensation question. I'm sure everyone has seen at least one or two other people talk about how to address this, so I don't want to spend a lot of time discussing it this morning. Hope that's okay with everyone. And then I'm going to talk about demographics questions. Okay. It was trying to figure out how to do this while being virtual as well as in person. But in the room right now, please, I'm going to ask you 3 questions. They're going to go from most people will have a response to this.
Virtually, we could use chat.
That's, you'll see, I actually suggested it. In fact, my second bullet. All right. So we're going to do a quick little poll, 3 questions, all right? I'd say instruction in Google Sheets and Excel for those of you who are not familiar with Google Sheets, or Excel for that matter. All right. Who's using some formula before in Excel or Google Sheets? Okay. Let the record show that in the room, most of us have.
Yes.
The V lookup formula. Who's used this? Okay. Okay. And finally, who has recorded a macro? All right. We're some rarefied air here, folks. I've been using Excel in some capacity for literally decades. And although I've actually recorded a macro, it was a mistake. David, what's the response like in the chat?
There were a couple each to the first two questions, and looks like one yes to the record a macro.
Okay.
And was recording a macro, you did it accidentally instead of recording a presentation?
All right. Now, here's why I asked this question. Okay. I don't know if the latest iteration of Excel 365 actually has 150 features. There might be more for all I know. It has a lot, right? That's just three. We use the single most common one in all of Excel, sum. We then looked at VLOOKUP, which is an old formula, been around in many iterations of Excel, I think going back to the 90s. And then almost no one has used record macro, even though that has also been a feature in Excel for a very long time. Okay? So a way to think about these this tiny handful, less than 1% of all the features and functions available in a universal software that almost everyone has used in some capacity, right? Now, here's the thing. Just because the feature exists doesn't mean we use it, right? It can't possibly. I mean, I knew someone who wrote a book, and for those of you who have used technology tools for a little longer, perhaps, you may remember that before everyone started using Microsoft Word, there used to be an application known as WordPerfect. WordPerfect. That was the giant. That's what everyone used back before Windows became ubiquitous. I have a friend who designed camera-ready pages of her book using WordPerfect. Now, for those of you who have never been publishing or printing before, that means you can take that output and get it directly to the printer, and they're good to go. That's extraordinary for those who have never been in those industries. That is absolutely mind-boggling. That's how good she was at it. So again, features that, even though the capability exists, it does not necessarily mean that people, A, know what it is, B, care, and certainly C, utilize it, right? All right, so the ATS is a very limited scope technology. ATS don't use AI. I know we're all talking about ChatGPT and maybe some of us talking about R and these other various iterations of generative AI, or GAI as often abbreviated. ATS don't do this. Because all it does is go patiently for us, the users, to give it instructions, just like software has been doing since its inception. And did I make the third bullet sufficiently clear to everyone? I hope I have, because I spent a lot of time talking about it by now. Now, that's what ATS really is. It's a tool to view the application characteristics. It does legal compliance stuff. This is good, because remember, one of the key features of any HR department is to mitigate risk and exposure and liability for the employer. It's not by far the only thing that HR does, but it's absolutely a very important function. And so in HR, we talk a lot about legal compliance stuff. So it's accounting, right? And yeah, For those of you who don't love accounting, it can be good. Remember this.
Yes, indeed.
Now, that doesn't, but it does ask the question, right? It forces us to ask that there's these misperceptions. Why is this a thing? Well, look, the universe of people who can share accurate, relevant, and current information about this stuff is really quite small, right? Because it's either going to come from publishers of ATS, right, or from people who actually use it in a really relatively meaningful level. Because who else could possibly know this specialized knowledge that you're not going to get otherwise? So for the first thing, the number of sources is small, right? It's not like when you have an opinion about politics, you're of whatever age, you have whatever your political beliefs are, but you've seen the history of how things work and you've drawn certain conclusions about those things. You can have informed opinion because you understand what the history is, what the context is of these things. That's a whole different thing, though, from understanding what the ATS does. Because you can't have an informed opinion. You don't have that critical baseline information yet. Now, there's an early version of my elevator speech when back in the day when I delivered it in person, where I would go to a networking group and I would say, I'm a recruiter, please don't keep me. We are acutely aware that there's a certain amount of mistrust or suspicion. And yeah, in some cases, outright hate. Let's be honest, it exists. We know it exists. All right, we're not idiots. Well, usually not. Seriously, subvote. Who's been outright lied to by a recruiter before? Show hands. Don't be shy. Don't be shy.
The rest of us don't know.
I agree.
Absolutely.
Who has been outright lied to by a recruiter? Okay. And then there's the third thing, right? If I get up here and I tell you, listen, the moon's really made out of green cheese. I don't know what all these other sources are talking about, but they're completely nuts. I've studied this very, very deeply over the last 3 decades. I've invested a lot of my time and energy into doing this research, and all they're talking about with rocks and minerals, it's all hooey. Someone out there, if I say that to 1 million people, is gonna believe it because I've said it in an authoritative sounding way. Now think about this for a second. When you talk to a salesperson, you know what that dynamic is. You know from the context that they have a vested interest in making you very interested and seeming very believable to you, right? We know that. But if I come to you and let's say I'm a car salesman, you come to the showroom and we're talking to you because you're in the showroom. And I say to you, well, tell me about what kind of car you're looking for, right? And if you tell me, listen, I just need a compact, I just need it to commute periodically, I'm doing like 15 miles a day, right? And here's 2 ways that a salesperson might respond to this, okay? Yeah, hey, great, listen, I've got like half a dozen cars that fit that kind of model. If you give me a sense of what kind of budget you have in mind, I'm sure I can find the right one for you. And it won't take us very long at all, right? And that's one possible response the salesperson has. The second possible response could be, oh yeah, I think we have a couple vehicles like that. There might be one that suits me, right? Which one are you more inclined to listen to, A or B?
A.
Of course A. Of course A. Because I made that statement in an authoritative sounding way. I instill confidence that I know what I'm talking about, right? So Both those statements are entirely plausible, right? Both the statements from the car salesman are entirely plausible, but the delivery is the key. Now, here's some other reasons why these misperceptions exist, right? Now, listen. I myself have been guilty of repeating things that were actually, I've subsequently learned are not true. Absolutely dying. And I want to talk about the first bullet for just a minute. Listen, there are sources that we trust. Some that we trust implicitly. Some we trust with verify, right? The old Kissinger line. But sometimes, even a reputable, highly regarded source will get things wrong. And this is what happened in an article that appeared in Harvard Business Review 2 years ago that antagonized every single recruiter under the sun. They talked about the applicant tracking system, and they repeated some of these same misperceptions. And HBR, of course, is a very well-known, very well-regarded news source. And they got lambasted by every single recruiter out there. But those who have never been in the job said, oh, okay, well, it came from HBR, that's a source I trust. This makes sense, this must be true. Other reasons, look, and so listen, if you take something from a trusted source, you're going to share that information because we're all here in the network, right? And what part of what we do in networking is sharing intelligence, sharing what we know, sharing connections. These are all part and parcel of networking. Other reasons, unfortunately, we want answers to questions that we have. Sometimes we'll craft them. Sometimes, because we don't have the appropriate information to know, it's complete hooey. And then, yes, there is one other reason. It's this one. And this is the one that inspires, well, my displeasure. Let's call it that. There's absolutely and undeniably certain elements that intentionally spreads fear, uncertainty, and doubt about the ATS because they want to sell you their ATS compliant resume template, resume solution, etc. I'm generally a pretty happy guy, but that stuff outright pisses me off because it's exploitative. It's exploitative, and you wouldn't know that it's hooey. Look, if you don't already have a job or you're otherwise on the job market, right? You're obviously not loving your current financial situation. You have a certain amount of anxiety because job search is always anxiety-inducing. Always, always, always. In addition to being frustrating. And so you might have a certain amount of fear or desperation. And that's a perfect storm for this jerk to exploit you. And that's why it enrages me. So yeah, there's a lot of stuff that I'm presenting with you. Can be dizzying and arcane. I get that, I do. And that's why I wanted to really pace the way I present the information this morning. All right. But listen, here's why you should embrace the applicant tracking system. All right. Now, in response to Bill's question earlier, I was saying that when I look at applicants for a position, I can see all of the candidates, all of the applicants, right? And whether we're talking 1 or 1,001, I can continue looking and just keep scrolling. But when I look at each applicant, I can see what other jobs they've applied to. And that is useful because, oh wow, okay. So I guess Arvin's very interested in working here. He's applied to several positions. And I can see which of those positions they were. Now, if Arvin is interested in working with us and is applying to positions that are suitable, that's great. I might want to have a conversation with Arvin because, you know, he may not necessarily be a good fit for any of these positions, but he's clearly interested. And what I see on the resume does look good. He's someone that might be able to add value to the company, maybe not now, but in the future. That's a conversation I'd like to have, you know. So yeah, it's absolutely building a history that the employer can identify, see, reference. Okay. When it's done well, it should facilitate your application process. Now, admittedly, not a lot of employers are great at this. I know. And listen, for what it's worth, I am very sorry. I'm absolutely very sorry about that because it stinks. But again, if we're talking about large employers, just be able to start up a search agent for some of these really large shops, might be handy. Really, really handy. Now, look, we all know that Indeed and ZipRecruiter are aggregators. They go out, they comb all the interwebs, and they find all the jobs they can find and copy them onto their website. Right? That's what Indeed's genius was when it started out. Because no one thought to do that. No one thought to lock down this stuff. So put it all together. And of course, what happened? All the job seekers said, oh, one-stop shopping for jobs? Hey, I'm in. Brilliant. Absolutely brilliant. So if it's a large employer, it's still useful. The thing to remember about Indeed and ZipRecruiter and any other aggregators that may be out there, though, is that they're never going to be as fast as the actual careers pages. They can't be. At best, they'll comb the page maybe once a day. Probably not that much more often than that. And especially if it's something that you want to move swiftly on. Do you want to spend 24 hours reading? I'm pretty sure I will.
Hey, yes, John. So does that mean that if a job has been posted for, say, a week, maybe 10 days prior, you'd be like, forget it, don't bother applying?
That's a really, really astute question, Tom. Thank you for asking it.
Because it's, there's so many positions we can apply to. What's prior?
Sure. So here's the thing. This is, at the end of the day, a complete and total black box. And it's really important to understand this. Not every job is being worked immediately with the same urgency as you would like. Okay. This may be for many reasons. It may be that the recruiting team or HR team is stretched really thin. It may be that the appropriate parties, whether that's HR, talent acquisition, hiring manager, whoever, hiring panel, they may not all be assembled and therefore not positioned to actually evaluate any candidates that are being presented. It may not honestly be the biggest priority to smoke in. What recruiters should do is still review all the applicants, at least until they feel like they've got a decent match. And the thing is, you have no way of knowing when that may be. Right? I mean, listen, 2 weeks ago, I sent an offer to someone, and then later, but that morning, I conducted an initial phone interview for someone for the same position. Now, I knew who else was sending that offer to that person within the day. But the thing is, hiring is never sure. Turns out we can't actually hire the person we get offered to. So the person I phone screened that day is actually in an interview literally right now. So the aging of a job posting is not necessarily a barometer. At least certainly if you're talking like a week, 2 weeks, even. I would say maybe at a month or thereabouts. It still never hurts, you know. Because what will sometimes happen, especially with a newly created position, is that the thought process of the hiring manager will evolve, right? Because the recruiter is presenting resumes and applications and say, okay, well, what do you think of Jill or Bob? Well, I kind of like this thing that Jill has, kind of like that thing that Bob has. I really want someone who's got both of these things. All right, I'll keep looking. Okay. Here's Celeste. Celeste has the kinds of things that you're talking about and the proportion that you described to me. Oh yeah, Celeste looks promising. Let's get her started. So although Jill or Bob may have initially seemed like strong fits, because the thinking evolves and because it's often informed by the candidates who also apply, it's very hard to know. So for you, just apply. But as always, apply and keep going, right? So, I'm not going to do the voice. We've all heard people do the voice badly many times, I'm sure. It's been decades. You don't need to hear me do it. So, yeah. Just, you know, don't do the voice station. So, you know what we're talking about. Misunderstandings. Just go to the URL. It should not be fear. And yes, like source thinking can be a powerful ally. So when lives come at you, do your best Neo impression. So thank you for coming to my EDS talk. I very much appreciate your time and attention this morning. Have a wonderful day.
By the way, an opportunity for any questions to Ed about the ATS or your experiences while he's here. And for those of you who are virtual, if you want to politely just unmute your mic and ask your questions as well, there's one right here, Melissa.
Hi, my name is Melissa, and I've always found jobs without using any system like this. I just kind of walk in and say, okay, start on Tuesday.
Okay.
But as I learned how to use this, which I just started this year, LinkedIn and ATS, I don't get any responses, but I'm really happy when they say, thank you for your application. If we're interested, we'll get in touch with you, because that's a response.
Okay.
But other than that, I never hear anything. So how do you, I need to sort of figure out how to navigate.
Okay. So Melissa, first of all, I'm sorry that you're having that experience. It is unfortunately very, very common, as you know. So to that, I would say, number one, that's an employer that is just not great at understanding how to provide good experience to the candidate. Ever since the pandemic began, actually really more since 21, most employers are trying to be better about candidate experience. Obviously, not everyone's gotten that memo yet and has not been able to realize that objective. It's very strange to me that this is as common as I seem to keep hearing that it is, Melissa. I will say that it is not always easy to evaluate the existing business processes, arrive at a consensus on what the correct path forward is to fix it, and then actually implement it.
I was mentioning last week that, they keep trumpeting that there's all these millions of jobs that have been, applied for, which is great.
Mm-hmm.
But then I look at diversity. Mm-hmm. And so they want all these applications. They want to know what your race is, what your gender, whether you speak Spanish or you consider yourself to be Hispanic.
Sure.
And I'm always curious, as to whether, well, why do they want to know?
Great question.
What form of Hispanic are you? Do you
Okay.
speak Spanish? There's a million questions about Hispanic. When it comes to the, Black people, they'll say, are you African American? You know, and I don't consider myself to be African at all.
Right.
But they sort of categorize you in that. So when it comes to diversity, there's kind of a, I don't know, you're supposed to fit into a box.
Right.
And sometimes you don't.
That's fair. So, Melissa, let's talk first about why those questions exist, okay?
Yeah.
Because it's a really, really important question, and I'm sure other people have had similar questions touching on this, okay? So I like to call those demographic questions. So here's the thing to understand about them. In the application process, you're presenting information to the employer that identifies, here are my qualifications, here's why I'm a really good fit for the position. But it will also ask these demographic questions. Now, these should be separate processes. It will seem the same process to you because you complete the qualifications piece, and then it goes right into the demographic questions. But the reason it asks these questions is because what happens is employers collate all this information and then send it in aggregate form across all of the applicants to the Federal Department of Labor, where their Bureau of Labor Statistics looks at this information and puts together demographics of who's in the workforce. That's what that information is doing there. That's why it asks things that you and I both know are categories that should not obviously be use that criteria, right? In order to evaluate your fitness for the position. Now, this includes things like veteran status, disability status, obviously cultural and racial heritage, things of that kind, of course. But that's the reason that exists. Now, in a well-functioning HR team, the recruiter can't even see the demographic information. Like, I can't see that stuff at all. Like, it's invisible to me. It does not exist to me. All right. What I can see is the resume that you presented, the application form. That stuff I can absolutely see. Does that answer your question, Melissa?
Well, I guess I'm getting at, and I used to be an investigator, but I'm getting at what I think is happening is what the way I always got a job. It's the nepotism. It's the people who know your name, people who know who you are, and the system is there, so it appears that they're doing the right thing. But in the end, especially because I come from a smaller town where people get hired that way,
okay.
In the end, it's really the ones that they know or the ones that they trust. That whole, feeling, the comfort level. I'll be working with somebody I know and I can trust and we can get this thing done as opposed to somebody that comes through some ATS system.
Okay, I'm not sure I'm quite hearing a question I can respond to in a meaningful way here.
Oh, that's okay. I'm just telling you that my question is, how often is the ATS used in comparison to people that are just known to the higher?
Okay, that's
how I've always gotten jobs.
So, Melissa, that's a very good question. So, thank you. So, it really depends. ATSs are geared towards employers at every part of the market. Now, most of them are not going to go to the trouble and expense if they have, say, fewer than 50 employees. But then, when you start talking 50 employees or more, that's typically the threshold at which you start actually having an HR person in the company. And the larger the payroll gets, the total number of employees, the more likely that we'll be using ATS. Okay, so it really depends on the kind of employers you're targeting. Like, for example, an enterprise such as, say, JPMorgan Chase could not possibly hire without an applicant tracking system. They have literally tens of thousands of employees globally. If they did not have an applicant tracking system, it would be almost impossible for them to take them forever to do any kind of hiring whatsoever. Now, maybe in the small medium businesses might very well not. Maybe they don't hire sufficient volume, or they have a particular dedicated team that can make it work. That absolutely is a thing that can happen. But I think it really depends on the employers we're talking about. All right. Hey, David.
Hi, there's a question online from Mary in the chat. The demographics questions used to be given to us after we were hired by HR in private. Why now is it before we are hired?
Okay, Mary, that's an interesting question. Well, I guess it depends on how long ago you were talking about, but I don't recall up until what I don't recall up until maybe the 21st century that I was applying online positions. I certainly wasn't dropping into places to deliver a resume or complete an application form. So maybe that's part of it. The demographic information is collated again for the reasons I already articulated. Maybe it's being perceived as a way to be more efficient and get all at once because they can. Because it's often hard to ask someone to complete a form in person. So maybe that's part of it. I don't know. It's an interesting question. Listen, I'd be lying if I said I know what the answer is. This is guesswork on my part. I want to be very, very transparent about that.
She wrote back. And to add on to that, it probably also they're going to get more information because if they're waiting to hire you and then find out that information, they're getting one person rather than when they get asked the applicant, they're getting 100 people. So the information becomes bigger, becomes more efficient and helpful to the actual people who use it.
Really, I'm not quite sure I'm following you.
You said the woman asked why she thought that it used to be until once you got hired, they would ask them.
Oh, I see.
But now it's one person's information. Now they're getting everybody who's after applying. So the content that they're deriving from all this is much more helpful.
Okay.
Statistically, getting 100 people.
Okay. Yeah. Yeah. That does make a great deal of sense. Thank you very much. Much broader universe of responses. So much more information that the Department of Labor can make use of. Thank you. Yep. Other questions?
Ed, it's John Sampson. I wondered, I'm good. Is it important if you have an internal reference that you put it in your application?
Yes, it is. The reason why it's important is that further to what Melissa was saying earlier, is that employers tend to trust the people that they already know, right? So remember that in a lot of cases, the recruiter has no idea what these relationships are. They're completely invisible in a black box to us. So you want to tell us that. But there's a second reason why this is useful, John. And the reason it's useful is that a lot of employers will have a referral program that rewards the person who referred. So listen, if there's a reward at stake, it means that who to give it to, right?
Yeah. Right.
Hey, Gary.
Let me get over to the mic so everybody can hear this. So you're a job applicant and you see an opportunity that looks like a good match for your background.
Like a rock star.
Okay. And what you want to do is make sure that your resume matches the requirements of the job as much as possible. So something that I have done and I advocate for people that I have helped, some of the career coach, is using an app called jobscan.co to compare the guts of the words and the phrases in what you've written versus the job. And my understanding is this is very important because when there are a large number of applicants, the ATS gives you a score on how you match. And if there's a large number of applicants, obviously you want to score highest and best. I'm not implying that you do anything here to misrepresent my feeling is this is important to do, and I would ask you to comment about this. Interested in your points.
Of course. So Gary, that question rests on the fourth bullet that I flashed back to on this slide. Yeah. There are, of course, there are certain ATSs, usually higher end ones, offer this feature. Most do not. And in talking to a lot of other recruiters, we don't give a hoot about match percentage. It doesn't mean anything to us. Because sometimes it will depend, because sometimes it just doesn't make sense. It's not relevant. It matches the wrong stuff. I have seen it match I have seen people who are matched 100%, and just for giggles, I looked at the resume. It was absolutely atrocious. It was a terrible match. So don't trust it. Recruiters don't trust it, and therefore job seekers shouldn't get it in my mind. Yes. Hey.
Trying to guess I'll do this. Okay, so I'm looking at a highly regarded FSB based in Yardley, Pennsylvania.
Mm-hmm.
And I have two questions. One,
Yes.
there were 53 applicants for this position a moment ago. There are now 54.
Okay.
So I clicked apply. This is a LinkedIn.
I knew you were going to say that.
So here are my two questions. One,
Yep.
it's demoralizing to see 54 applicants.
Yes, it is.
So how accurate is that number? Because I'm assuming it was generated based on the click and not the actual application. And from your experience, without divulging anything, you would know anything about this FSB based in Yardley, Pennsylvania.
No.
From your experience, what percentage of the 54 people are actually like legitimate applicants, and that we should sort of just not worry about that and say, no, you're good, just do it?
John, that is a fabulous pair of questions about this hypothetical enterprise I've never heard of before.
Yes.
So let's get into that, shall we? First of all, I knew as soon as you started talking about the number of applicants that you were talking about the LinkedIn job posting number of applicants. Here's the thing about the LinkedIn job posting number of applicants. Your theory is exactly correct. Number of clicks. That has nothing to do with the actual number of people who said, yes, I'm applying for the position, complete the application process, present a resume. Completely irrelevant. And here's why. And this is the thing that you will never know unless you actually have worked with this stuff. The reason you won't know is because at the end of the day, there are two ways that a LinkedIn job posting can do it. Either as someone who has one of the premium accounts, you can create a job posting on LinkedIn, which is fun. I've done it a lot. But it's South County applicant, like the apply button. It doesn't care if you follow through with submitting your LinkedIn profile or even uploading a resume. The other reason it can't possibly is because the other way that jobs appear in LinkedIn jobs is because it's integrated with the applicant tracking system the employer uses, and it's automatically cross-posted. Doesn't avoid any job portal. And therefore, because there is no interaction between LinkedIn and the applicant tracking system on the back end, it has to treat it with, well, you click apply, we'll say you applied. It doesn't care if you fact me. It doesn't care if you got halfway through, so heck with this is silly. It can't possibly know that. So, yeah, you should completely disregard the LinkedIn number of applicants because it's garbage. It's meaningless. Now, I'm sorry, there was a second part to your question.
So of the alleged 54 applicants, what percentage of them are legit, and what percentage in your experience are like, why did this person apply?
That is a very difficult question to answer in the abstract of the employer we're talking about. I will say that in my personal experience, typically, if 25% of the people applying are meaningfully, and not just qualified, but substantially qualified, right? Not just could do the job, but could do the job at a good level, right? Because these are very different things. As like we all know. 25%. That's a really, really good rate. I've had instances where I had 140 plus applicants for fairly senior positions. And exactly three poll applicants had the key thing that was in the job title. Right. So it varies wildly. There's a saying among recruiters that job recs are, no two job recs are really alike, because the amount of work that goes into the one is not often not mutually correlated to the amount of work that goes into another. And that's has proven to be true in many instances in my life. So it's very difficult in the abstract to give a substantial, more specific answer to the question. Does that help though, John?
Yeah. It should go without saying that if I feel unqualified, I should apply.
Yeah.
But at the same time, if I see 50 applicants, it's like, nah, it might be really more like 10. And I have a shot, because if there are 100 applicants that I think are really well qualified, I'm not even wasting time.
So here's the things to bear in mind with that, right? Like, okay, for example, I have a not tiny presence on LinkedIn as a platform. If the odds are very strong that if you go to LinkedIn on a desktop and you search Ed Hahn, there are many Ed Hahns on LinkedIn, but the odds are very high you're going to see me. There's a couple of reasons for that. Part of that, though, is there's a pretty significant presence there. I mean, in fact, I have more followers on my LinkedIn profile than my current employer company page has. All right. Now, if I post a job, a lot of people are going to see it. But and especially if the job is something that is reasonably popular and readily understandable for folks, there's going to be a lot more interest. A lot more people are going to click on it to read the full job description. Now, if I post something that is completely opaque, no one understands what the heck this job is, and that has nothing to do with seniority or the qualification. It's just, do I understand what this thing is? And maybe out of morbid curiosity, you'll click on it, But if the job title is confusing, you're probably not that interested. So for various reasons, it's very difficult in the abstract to speak in a meaningful way for this. And this kind of proves the thing I like to say a lot, that every question about job search can be answered accurately. It depends. How are we doing on time?
That's a famous quote from Marty Latt.
Yeah, I'm not surprised.
Yeah, we're fine for time.
Okay, cool.
So we didn't run over the board.
Hey, Bill.
Hey, Ed, I got two.
Yes, sir.
One of the things that I really like to hear that you said today is that in the real world, job postings are sort of fluid, that maybe the original job, however it came out, maybe it wasn't the be all and end all job description for that job. But that fluidity means it gets refined. Does that ever make it back out so a candidate sees a better version?
That is a fabulous question, Bill. And you might have seen me doing my great big grin as you were speaking. So here's the thing. If you want to make a recruiter laugh, you go and ask them, when's the last time you saw a job description that was complete, fully accurate and current? Go ahead, ask them. Go ahead, see what they say. And when you are no longer deafened from the laughter. Right? Because it's a bit of a truism among recruiters that whatever the job posting says, almost certainly not everything that the ideal applicant should know, qualifications they should have, etc. And the problem is that we may edit that in order to be more accurate, but if we edit the document, you're never going to know that we edited it. You have no way of knowing that, because unless you do a text comparison, there's no notification involved, right? So the problem here is that the job description is the best guide you have, but it should not be understood to be holy writ, for lack of a better term, because they can be fluid. I was saying earlier in the presentation that sometimes the need will evolve. And because it's a fluid thing, maybe it can't be, the new state can't be accurately captured, or it's still in the process of changing or evolving. And therefore, it's difficult to say it is no longer X, it is Y. What verbiage do we use to reflect this? You know, and that is a bit troubling and confusing, I know, but that is the reality that is presenting this.
Okay, now my second one.
Yes.
Early on, you said that a recruiter goes through the thought process. Has this person applied to maybe more than one job at this large company? And if you took that as a positive, that, hey, this person is interested in the company and may merit another look. That goes a little bit counter to some of the other advice, which would say, know exactly what you want to do and go as a job seeker and go for that.
Okay.
So how do you reconcile those two?
That's a very good question. When I said that earlier, I believe I contextualized it by saying qualified for these things. They all fit. These positions all fit for what Arvind has on the resume. And that's a very, very important distinction, right? And I'm going to tell you a little story about an applicant that I remember from earlier in my career. At the same position, in fact, that you and I discussed about before the meeting got started, Bill. I call this guy Superman. I used to work in an external recruiting company. And after a while, we would post jobs on, I think, Indeed. And after a while, Superfan showed up. Now, Superfan, while I'm sure a really nice guy, had absolutely no meaningful or relevant qualifications for any of the IT jobs that we were posting. Had none of the skills, certainly not formal education, and definitely not the work experience. And yet, every stinking job we posted, Superfan would apply. After a little while, we just auto-rejected him as soon as we saw his name. Because we know what kind of job we were posting, they were IT jobs. He was not an IT guy. And this Superfan went on for, I kid you not, months. This is not the track history. This is not the record you want to build, right? I mean, he was completely unfocused. Security architect, applied. Java developer, applied. Help desk, applied. And none of the skills pay myself. None. Didn't matter. But I'm assuming we're not talking about an extreme case like Superfan. So what I'm saying is, as long as the positions make sense, right? As long as they suit your skill set, that you are not just qualified to do the job and meet those qualifications, but highly so, absolutely apply. I had a conversation with a guy literally yesterday who has some really interesting skills. I was really fascinated. There would have been a job that, you know, he would have made a lot of sense for. So within 5 minutes of conversation, I said to him, hey, listen, there is something I do have something that might suit your skill set, and it's kind of a very rich combination of skills. And then I said to him, listen, I see the amount of experience you have, and I don't think my budget's going to fit you. So I told him, listen, here's what my budget is for this role. I said, yeah, no, that's not going to work at all. But it's still resonating sending to one of my hiring managers because it's really interesting. So we have to remember that a job posting is a construct. It's an artificial construct because hiring managers get headcount approved, they get budgeting approved, and department one. Once they've gotten it, great. Now here's the budget we've associated with this approved headcount. Here is the things that we want this person to achieve, and this is the job title, and therefore the qualifications that should come along with it. Doesn't necessarily mean that a given person isn't still a really good person to work at that employer in some capacity. Did that answer the question? Fantastic.
Ed, it's John Sampson again. I
Yes, sir.
wonder, do you have some experience to share with us about what you tell people who don't get offered the job?
John, I'm not sure I heard the last part of the question. Let me have it one more time, please.
I'm sorry.
Yeah, could you ask the question again, please? I'm not sure I heard the end.
Well, basically, what do you tell the folks that don't get offered the job?
No one likes delivering bad news. No one does. If you are not a match for the position at the outset before you and I have ever had a conversation, you get an email. I will tell you, I'm sorry, we moved forward with other candidates. I forget exactly what the version is that we use, which is a little embarrassing because I helped draft it, frankly. But I think it's something to the fact that there are other candidates that we considered that we thought were even more strongly matched than you. And you want to be very judicious in your verbiage here, right? Because you want them to be interested in the employer and seeing other opportunities with you in vast majority of cases. But let's say it's someone that I had a conversation with, maybe has interviewed, maybe we're a finalist. And in those instances, I ask them I tell them I have an update and I would like to speak with them. Now, some people don't want that. Some people don't want the voice call to get a call, to get the information that they didn't want. I respect that, but I have no way of knowing this. So what I tell them is, unfortunately, there was someone else that was being considered that we felt was a stronger match for the position. Now, oftentimes, recruiters will say that because, remember, recruiters, at least in the corporate world, are part of HR. And part of what we do is risk mitigation and eliminate liability. So some recruiters will say that when there's a different reason, a more accurate reason. This is unfortunately true. A lot of the things that happen in the workplace are not necessarily best practices, but they happen. We know they do. I try as to the best I'm able to be as transparent as I can. Listen, there was an internal candidate. This does happen a fair bit. And again, going back to the point Melissa was making earlier, if you know someone, the likelihood is stronger that you will want to work with that person again, right? I mean, it's absolutely true. I see it all the time. That's I think as best as I can respond to the question, John.
Do you ever get a response that says something back like, would you give me another bite of the apple?
Well, the answer is going to be something along the lines of, well, unfortunately, I don't think I have another opportunity that's suitable. But if I did, I would immediately transition the conversation into, hey, listen, this position wasn't the right fit, but I have something else that I think might work. Now, I might, and that's a conversation I've gotten to have a few times with folks. It's fun. I like it. It respects the investment that the job seeker has already made in exploring the future with the organization. And I don't like that investment to be wasted any more than the job seeker does.
Thank you.
Hey, Michael.
Good morning, Ed. Nice seeing you again. Thank you very much for coming out and speaking to us. Always learn something new every time I hear your presentation. There was something that you had mentioned earlier in your presentation that tied into the question that I had.
Okay.
You had suggested taking a look at the URL.
Yep.
While you're doing the application.
Yep.
To identify the ATS that is currently being used.
Right.
That you're interacting with. What are you looking for? What are you trying to identify? What does that tell you Or is it such a high level, you need a PhD in ATS
Oh, no,
to make it worthwhile
It's-
knowing which ATS you're using?
it's not that arcane. If you talk with recruiters, experienced recruiters, about applicant tracking systems and ask them, which is the one that you would least like to work with again? Well, you're almost universally going to hear back as one name, Taleo. Almost universally. The ones who don't, yes, I know. The ones who don't probably haven't worked. But Taleo is unfortunately one of the applicant tracking systems that does out of the box force the applicant to upload a resume and then copy and paste everything. So what this means is that if you know that you're looking at a Taleo powered careers page, you may have a very irritating application process ahead of you. That is absolutely factually true. No denying it. Okay? And I want to be, again, very transparent about that. Others, however, are very well known among recruiters as being less annoying. There's one called Greenhouse. It's typically favored by smaller organizations. It's not as fully featured as something like that, which, to be clear, does have a lot of features, like Microsoft Excel. But Greenhouse, for example, I believe natively has the ability to intelligently import data off the resume, and or possibly the ability to profile integration. That kind of intelligence, I think, is useful to you on a very practical level. Is that a meaningful answer to the question?
It's getting close.
Okay. Help me get closer.
Your answer is more in line as to a recruiter utilizing an ATS system.
Well,
coming from the other end, I'm an applicant. I'm a geek. I read software manuals to understand how the software works.
Sure.
So I can get the best I can out of that software.
Right.
So I'm approaching it from the point of a user.
Sure.
I am now using Teleo,
right,
as my ATS system. I know if I do this while I'm completing the application, that it puts me in a better light, a better position than somebody not doing it.
See, that's kind of not the way I don't believe. If I'm understanding what your clarification correctly, and it's possible I'm not, really. The reason I'm talking about why you use knowing which ATS you're talking about is useful is knowing, how annoying is this going to be? That is utility. If you see Greenhouse as part of the URL, the part that's followed by the .com or whatever suffix at the top level, you know it's going to be a non-people process. Other ones, that's less so. And the fact of the matter is, oftentimes, you as the applicant won't know this. That's why, but I'm giving you 2 grants specifically, so that you have that insight, and hopefully that will help you, at least help you optimize your investment. So that's the sole context within which that information actually will be useful to you. Does that help, Michael? Does that get you to speak to what you wanted? Yeah. Okay, great. Hey.
Thanks for coming in. So I have a real-time question that comes up here. So I got a message on LinkedIn about 6 hours ago about a job. I went to click on it while I'm sitting here, actually. No offense. But it shows that it was so it was posted one day ago. John's Point has 51 applicants.
Yep.
It's already says here that no longer accepting applications. So my 2 points is, one, that's an example of some frustration that as a job seeker we find that it's nothing to do with you whatsoever. I'm not saying it's not your company, don't worry. But something like that, is that coming off of somebody going on to most like LinkedIn and saying, I'm not going to take any more applicants, or is that somehow pulling off of this company's website and getting that the job's no longer on the website? Like
what happens?
Yeah, like should I bother to go look at this company's website, looking for the job? It's a small company, so I'm not even sure it would actually be on the website. But like, how does that happen a day later?
So let's talk about that.
Thanks.
You're welcome. So I'm astonished by what you described to me. I can tell you this, I'm going to handle the inquiry in reverse sequence. All right. Go start with the last thing you said. It was a small employer. Listen, LinkedIn is one of the top, most popular websites in the world. If you think that it's cheap to get a job posted on LinkedIn, you are sadly mistaken. Okay? It costs a fair bit of money to do that. Most small employers are not positioned to make that kind of investment. So what this suggests to me is that more likely they posted the job and said, oh gosh, there is something wrong. Because remember, it's not, it says it's not going to be active. It doesn't mean, that doesn't necessarily try to fill, right? So, but be very cognizant of the language being employed here. I mean, I've posted a job, I actually have posted a job that I had to shut down within the same day myself. Because I realized I opened it with the wrong budget. In fact, I actually have a situation right now. I opened at the wrong seniority level. We actually have a bigger budget approved for it. But we have to open it up and I get back to work again. So there could be, now it could be that, it could be any number of other factors. However, I will tell you this, equal employment opportunity guidelines require that any job is posted for 5 days. Even if they have somebody in mind, it must be posted for 5 business days so that everyone has the opportunity to apply for the position who's interested. And they must do that. That's part of the labor stuff. You don't mess with that. So that's why I was so surprised when you first started describing the situation to me. I was like, how that doesn't work, you know? But that's kind of why I was so surprised. Right.
Okay, folks.
All right.
Ed, thank you very much.
As always.
By the way, Ed does not have a wishy-washy handshake. So someone else has talked to us about a strong handshake. You know, I never heard of that word or acronym FUD other than the Elmer reference.
Oh.
So yeah, fear, uncertainty, and doubt. So hopefully now you can approach using the applicant tracking system or maybe your entire job search without fear, uncertainty, or doubt. Another word comes to mind is ignorance. That, by the way, that is not an acronym, that is actually a word. So, you know, when you attend a program like this and you get some insights, hopefully now you can approach using the applicant tracking system with a little bit more affirmative information rather than just saying, you know, apply, upload. So you can apply effectively and increase your opportunity to have your resume seen and hopefully be called. So, and then, you know, to John's question earlier, and Ed had made a comment about, you know, should you reach out to somebody in the company even if you've applied online? And the short answer is yes. There was a University of Michigan study, Mark Beal told us about that, and he'll be with us again next month also, that on average about 250 applicants for any online job that's posted. I don't know if it's Toledo or whatever, but that's kind of what the average was, at least during a very heavy job market. Of that, internal references made up 7% of the applicants, but 40% of the hires. So, you know, if you're going to go down to Atlantic City and play in a casino, you're going to want to play in that 40% of the higher casino and not the 1 in 250.4%. So it's always beneficial to have a contact if you can within the organization. And I can tell you the last time I actually applied and landed a job, and I've since been independent, what happened was I made a connection into the company before I applied online. And she said, listen, upload your resume, but email it to me and I'll put it in front of the hiring manager. And I wound up getting the interview and ultimately the job. So having that personal contact is very beneficial. So without that, listen to some of the steps and advice that we got about using the ATS, especially using it just as your own tool, and hopefully increase your odds. So Ed, thank you very much. It's always wonderful to get your perspective, not just as a recruiter, but also as a job search ally as well. So you really get to teach us from your passion as well as the information you have to share. So thank you for that. And so let me let you know what's coming up over the next couple of weeks. Next week, we will be right back here in person. And someone that I know very well is presenting, me. It is the week before the Independence Day holiday, and it was just easier to get me here than another presenter. But I'm going to be talking about the importance of personal branding for offer negotiation. And so a lot of us are really wondering, how do I answer that salary question throughout the process? And there's different points of answering the salary question, but also your personal branding, the way you promote yourself, your value proposition, how you can use that and leverage it to your advantage. So that will be next week, right here, the 30th. The following week, July 7th, is Independence Holiday Week. And so we are actually taking that week off. The library will be open, but our program will be off. And we will be back July 14th for only our in-person meeting, back to being in person only. So certainly I'm hopeful we'll see a lot more people. We've got a nice turnout today, but we should be improving that over time as well. And in the meantime, you can also visit other groups as well, specifically our cousin organizations. PSG of Central New Jersey meets on Monday mornings at 10:30, psgcnj.biz. They are still virtual. And PSG of Mercer County meets virtually on Wednesday mornings, psgmc.org. So you can go visit them as well. Terrific organizations. So until we get to see you, hopefully by next week, we will simply say, bye, everybody.